Ladies and gentlemen.
There are other people in this world who subscribe to that same concept of just be outrageous on your socials, and that's the only thing people will respond to, because we live in such an outrageous culture in which people only respond to crazy things that you've got to out crazy everybody. And the person who's really taken that on is Jack Schlossberg. Last summer, he was made political correspondent for Vogue, which is the greatest laugh and a half you've ever seen. One of these days, we got to get into the editor of Vogue. Anna Wintour is the greatest poser that the fashion world has ever conceived. Anybody who walks around with that haircut and those glasses all day, every day, is a person who does not understand fashion and has no desire to. For them to have turned to Jack and said, hey, what if you are our political correspondent, shows that, once again, she lacks any kind of understanding about how the world works. He has been in the news recently because he has scrubbed all of his socials after getting on a show and saying that the only way to be noticed on socials, the only way to tell your truth, is to be as outrageous as possible. And he has been.
If you're going to tweet something out, make it so extreme, that you can't, that it's completely, that's what Trump does. It's like a completely clear statement. Take it all the way. And that's the only thing that really resonates online, because everything else, it's too confusing otherwise. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you have to be controversial or unexpected. So you have to be very clear and you have to be very controversial in order to break through, I think.
Jack has had a real hard time of late, probably because his mother's Caroline Kennedy. And if you have seen her at all, and we're going to talk about her in just a second, you will understand that crazy is the name of the game in this family. And the vestiges of this once beautiful Camelot have all but fallen away, and the people who are left still believe that they should be as important to you as they once were, and yet they are not conducting themselves in any sort of a way that would earn that respect. Now, I'm not saying that's true of all the Kennedys by any means, but there are certain Kennedys who've decided to come out and be very vocal and are just showing their ass every which way they turn. So this week, one of the stories that was in the news was the fact that Jack, after having told everybody in an interview that you should just go out and be your crazy self and say the most outrageous things because that's the only way social media works, then decided to scrub his social media, but probably for good reason.
I'm trying to figure out the right present to get Donald Trump for the inauguration, so I found a really rare animal and killed it, and I'm going to give it to him.
Now, obviously, anybody who has ever listened to RFK Jr. talk knows that he does have a vocal cord disorder, which makes his speech halting and gravelly. But that's not something to mock someone over. What a pitiful and pathetic thing to do. I don't care what you think about RFK Jr. Don't make fun of people for something that they can't help. And Jack is real butthurt if anybody makes fun of anything that he thinks is important, but he has no problem mocking other people. He was also recently had put a video on which he decided to mock Megyn Kelly.
Hey Megyn Kelly, it's me, Jack Schlossberg. You insulted me, and so I'm just checking in, starting a dialogue, seeing if you're okay. The two genders rule must be tough. None of us know which one you are, so let us know. And stop attacking trans people. You do it for a living professionally on your show. I don't really get that. I don't get what makes that so fun for you.
It's real rich that he would try to say that she's way out of line in saying anything about trans people, and that trans people are beautiful people and that we should care about them and not make fun of them. Okay. But then he proceeds to make fun of her, saying, we don't even know if you're a man or a woman. Are you trans? And it just like, well, but Jack, I think you probably are missing the point you're trying to make, making a trans joke about Megyn Kelly when you say we shouldn't joke about trans people. It's like he is not able to think clearly. Maureen Callahan this past week called him out, and she wrote a scathing article about him and the fact that he is so full of his own legacy. He can't seem to recognize the fact that he is not acting as the legacy would call him to behave. And she wrote in the Daily Mail saying that Jack Schlossberg seems to share two key traits with JFK, his late grandfather and former president: shamelessness, and quite possibly attention deficit disorder. Actually, let's add entitlement, narcissism, lack of self-awareness, cruelty, and hypocrisy to that list. If you can bear it, take a look at Schlossberg's Instagram account under the handle Jack Uno. Updated almost hourly, this 32-year-old excuse for a man clearly has nothing better to do. His feed is an unhinged string of rants, invectives, sprinkled with footage of Jack ballet dancing, lip-syncing in the aisles of CVS and Dunkin', and attempting to bait established media figures into leveling him up. His face, which he clearly believes is incredibly handsome, is often shoved right into the camera. It's all extremely aggressive, as are his thoughts, and I use that word loosely, of course, such as this tweet on December 28th. Coquettish? Am I coquettish? So are you. Stop playing games. Coquettes of the world, unite. 5 days prior, he wrote, love is corporate. Falling in love is the most corporate thing you can do. Stay independent. Do not fall in love. It's amazing to watch this idiot coast on his lineage, as if that gives him some conferred wisdom while denigrating RFK Jr. for doing the exact same thing. For suffering from the same sense of moral superiority as his maligned relatives, such as his great-uncle Ted, who left a young woman to die at Chappaquiddick. All that wealth, all that privilege, all that education and access to power, and what is Schlossberg doing with it? Rattling around a messy apartment, unshaven and in sweats, ranting at us in front of a permanently unmade bed. If the average person saw this guy coming at them in the streets or the subway, they'd run the other way. America's well and truly through the looking glass. We are now in a place where the Kennedy family name is an utter liability. Jack Schlossberg can partly thank himself for that. Hey, at least that's one real accomplishment. Ooh. Maureen Callahan coming at him with a hatchet. But crazy doesn't fall far from the tree, because recently his mother, also as she worked to grind the Kennedy name into the dirt, decided to come forward and make an absolutely unhinged video against her nephew, RFK Jr. I don't care where you stand on him politically. This video was so rude and mean and hateful and spiteful and did none of the things she was hoping to accomplish, even for the people who sat on her side and believed the things that she was saying. So she came out right before RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing, and she decided to write this public letter to let you know that he was a predator. And those are the words that she used. And she does this clunky job of trying to defend the actions that she's about to commit herself to. And she lets you know that I've never come out and said anything against him, even when I could. I've always felt like it just wasn't my place, and I just didn't have anything to add to the conversation. Although I could have, I didn't. But I've always held my tongue. But now I'm gonna rage. And she just unleashed the most unhinged rant.
I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator. I watch his younger brothers and cousins follow him down the path of drug addiction. His basement, his garage, his dorm room were always the center of the action, where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in a blender to feed to his hawks. It was often a perverse scene of despair and violence. That was a long time ago, and people can change. Through his own strength and the many second chances he was given by people who felt sorry for the boy who lost his father, Bobby was able to pull himself out of illness and disease. I admire the discipline that took and the continuing commitment it requires. But siblings and cousins who Bobby encouraged down the path of substance abuse suffered addiction, illness, and death, while Bobby has gone on to misrepresent, lie, and cheat his way through life.
Caroline Kennedy, your parents were wildly famous and had quite a shine about them. You have failed to carry on that legacy. And as Maureen Callahan said in her article, please come get your son. He is an embarrassment. He is absolutely a discredit to you, but you're not helping yourself either when you make these videos in which you really try to sound morally superior. Any vestige that you had of being honorable and gracious as you laid your concerns out for the American people, which you may legitimately have, were completely swept away when you just went on that unhinged rant about him being a predator and keeping birds of prey and killing animals and how he dragged all these people in the family down into drugs and debauchery. Like, you could have graciously shared your concerns if you had some. That was not how to do it.